What you're about to discover in the next few minutes could change the way you see Princess Diana's story. Because behind the sparkle, the dresses, and the flashes, there was a message, a hidden message no one was supposed to read. Imagine receiving a note that says, "If anything happens to me, don't believe what they tell you." This is no movie line. It was a real warning, written by a woman who knew her time was running faster than fate. For years, that secret remained stitched, literally, in the lining of a dress. And today, for the first time, you will hear the story from the one person who saw it with her own eyes. But before we understand it, we need to go back to the beginning. The princess's hidden message. Can you imagine receiving a message that says, "If something happens to me, don't believe what they tell you"? That was exactly what Diana confided to me the last time I saw her alive, or what everyone believes was the last time. Welcome to this new episode of our series about the darkest secrets of the British royalty. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, I recommend that you watch the previous episode where I explained how I became Diana's trusted seamstress. Today, I'll reveal why that trust led her to share with me her greatest secret. Before we begin, do you really believe you know the whole truth about what happened that fateful night of August 31st, 1997 in Paris? I assure you that what you're about to hear will forever change your perspective. The last encounter, it was August 27th, 1997, just 4 days before the supposed accident. Diana had arranged to meet me in a suite at the Hotel Ritz in Paris. I had flown from London that same morning with a very specific commission. I had to deliver a black dress that I had made, following very precise instructions. When I arrived at the hotel, the security was extraordinary. Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father and owner of the Ritz, had arranged a special protocol for all visitors to the princess. I had to identify myself 3 times and go through 2 security checks before they allowed me to go up. The suite was impressive, with views of the Place Vendôme. Diana was standing by the window when I entered. She was wearing simple jeans and a white shirt. Her short blonde hair gleamed in the sunlight coming through the window. She looked as beautiful as always, but there was something different about her. "Maria, thank you for coming so quickly," she said as she hugged me. Her embrace was longer and stronger than usual. Now I understand that perhaps she sensed it might be the last time we would see each other. I'll tell you something I've never shared publicly. Diana was trembling. I could feel the slight tremor of her hands when she took the dress I had brought her. Have you ever felt someone's fear manifest physically? It's a sensation you never forget. "Nobody followed you, right?" she asked while nervously glancing toward the door. "No, Your Highness. I was very careful as you asked," I replied, becoming increasingly intrigued by her behavior. Diana sat on the sofa and indicated that I should do the same. Then she looked toward the balcony and lowered her voice. "Maria, there's something I need to tell you, something I can't trust to anyone else." The message, what Diana revealed to me in the following minutes, would change my life forever. According to Professor Richard Aldrich, an intelligence services expert from the University of Warwick, Diana had been under constant MI6 surveillance since her separation from Prince Charles in 1992. This wasn't paranoia. It was a fact confirmed by multiple sources within the British intelligence community. They're listening to my calls, Diana told me. They're checking my mail. I can't trust anyone on my team. I think they're all reporting on my movements. The black dress I had brought had a special feature. Following her precise instructions, I had sewn a secret pocket in the lining, practically undetectable, even to someone who examined the garment carefully. Diana took a small sealed envelope from her purse and slipped it inside the secret pocket. Then she looked directly into my eyes and spoke the words that would torment me in the following years. If something happens to me, Maria, don't believe what they tell you. The truth is here, she said discreetly, pointing to the dress. Promise me you'll keep this dress in a safe place and only open it if something unusual happens to me. Can you imagine the weight of that responsibility? What would you have done in my place? If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like this video so more people can learn about this story that the powerful have tried to silence for more than 2 decades. And if you have any theories about what that message might contain, leave them in the comments. The unexpected confession, what Diana revealed to me next, was even more shocking. She moved closer to me and in a barely audible voice said, "I'm pregnant, Maria, with Dodi's child." According to the official autopsy report conducted at the Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris on August 31st, 1997, Diana was not pregnant at the time of her death. However, Dr. Jean-Marc Deguillaume, who participated in the first aid after the accident, declared in 2007 that there were significant irregularities in how Diana's blood samples were handled. Diana continued, "The royal family would never allow me to have a Muslim child, a Muslim half-brother to the future King of England." It's unthinkable for them. Her eyes filled with tears as she gently caressed her belly. "I'm scared, Maria, truly scared." According to royal historian Hugo Vickers, the relationship between Diana and the royal family had reached its lowest point in the summer of 1997. Diana's interview with Martin Bashir for the BBC in 1995, where she had declared that there were 3 people in my marriage, had been the last straw. "Charles will never forgive me for that interview," Diana told me. And the Queen, well, let's say her patience has limits. Evidence of the plot, Diana opened her bag and took out several photographs. They were images of men I didn't recognize, clearly taken with a telephoto lens. "These men have been following me since I arrived in Paris," she explained. "At first I thought they were paparazzi, but they're too professional. They never try to take photos, they just observe and report." Former MI6 officer Richard Tomlinson testified under oath during the investigation into Diana's death that he had seen a document in 1992 that discussed the possibility of assassinating a foreign political leader using a car accident. The plan included blinding the driver with a bright light inside a tunnel. Does that sound familiar? Diana showed me a note she had received at the hotel. "We know about the baby. Think of the princess." It wasn't signed. "Dodi wants us to get married immediately," Diana confided to me. "He wants us to fly to his villa in Saint-Tropez tomorrow and stay there until the baby is born. He says we'll be safe there." Do you think Diana was right to fear for her life? Or was it all the product of paranoia fed by years of media harassment and pressure from the royal family? The dress with the secret. Let's return to the dress. It wasn't just any dress. It was a black silk creation with a cut that perfectly concealed any hint of early pregnancy. Diana had specifically commissioned it for a gala dinner that would take place in London on September 15th, a dinner she would never attend. "I need this dress to be ready when I return to London," she told me, "and I need the pocket to be completely undetectable." I had worked on that pocket for days, using sewing techniques I had learned from my grandmother, who had been a seamstress for Spanish aristocracy during the Civil War. The pocket was located on the left side near the heart and was accessed through a small opening in the side seam that blended perfectly with the dress design. Diana tried on the dress right there. It fit her perfectly, as always. While she looked at herself in the mirror, I noticed a strange expression on her face, as if she were seeing a different person. "This might be my last black dress," she said with a sad smile. At that moment, I didn't understand the full meaning of her words. Now, every time I remember that instant, I feel a chill run down my spine. If you find this story as disturbing as I did living through it, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming episodes where I'll reveal what I found in that secret pocket and how it completely changed my understanding of what really happened that night in Paris. Diana and Dodi's last days. To fully understand the context of this secret message, we need to examine Diana and Dodi's last days together. According to official records, the couple had spent 10 days sailing the Mediterranean aboard the yacht Jonikal, owned by Mohammed Al-Fayed. On August 30th, one day after my meeting with Diana, the couple flew from Sardinia to Paris. They landed at Le Bourget Airport at 3:20 p.m. and went directly to the Ritz Paris. That afternoon, Dodi visited the Repossi jewelry store on Place Vendôme and bought an engagement ring. According to Alberto Repossi, the store owner, it was a ring from the Tell Me Yes collection, valued at £205,000 sterling, approximately 250,000 euros. Is it a coincidence that he bought an engagement ring right after Diana revealed her pregnancy to me? I don't think so. According to Trevor Rees-Jones, the only survivor of the accident and Dodi's personal bodyguard, there was unusual tension that day. In his book, The Bodyguard Story, published in 2000, Rees-Jones mentions that Diana and Dodi seemed to be discussing contingency plans, something they had never done before. Diana called her children, Princes William and Harry, that afternoon. According to Prince Harry, in his controversial autobiography, Spare, published in 2023, that last call was strangely formal, and his mother seemed worried about something she couldn't discuss over the phone. The night of the accident. The official version of the events of the night of August 31st is well known. Diana and Dodi had dinner at the Ritz Hotel, then tried to leave through the main entrance but were harassed by paparazzi. They decided to implement a distraction plan. They would leave through the back door, while their doubles exited through the main entrance. Henri Paul, the Ritz's security chief, was designated as a driver, despite not being a professional driver, and according to the official investigation, had a blood alcohol level 3 times higher than the French legal limit. The Mercedes S280 crashed in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel at 00:23 hours on August 31st. Dodi and Henri Paul died instantly. Diana was extracted alive from the wreckage, but died later in the hospital. But there are disturbing details that the official version doesn't explain. For example, why did the tunnel security cameras, which worked perfectly before and after the accident, record nothing during the critical minutes? According to a French police report leaked in 2006, 17 cameras on the Mercedes route didn't work that night. Or the mysterious white Fiat Uno that, according to witnesses, had contact with the Mercedes just before the accident but was never found. Or the bright flash of light that several witnesses reported seeing inside the tunnel seconds before the impact. And what about the 20 minutes it took the ambulance to reach the hospital, despite the Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital being only 4 kilometers away? If you're following this story closely, leave a comment with the word truth to show we're together in this search for answers. The dress after the accident. The morning of August 31st, I woke up to news of the accident. My heart stopped. I immediately thought of the dress and the secret message it contained. The dress was in my workshop in London. Diana had asked me to keep it until her return. Now that dress was possibly Diana's last communication, a message she knew might be necessary if her fears came true. With trembling hands, I went to my workshop and took the dress from its protective cover. I spread it on my work table and located the secret pocket. Inside was the envelope Diana had placed. For hours, I stared at that envelope without daring to open it. What should I do? Diana had said to only open it if something unusual happened to her. Did a car accident qualify as unusual? Given her fear and warnings, it seemed exactly the type of situation she was referring to. Finally, at sunset, I opened the envelope. Inside were 3 things: a handwritten letter, an ultrasound dated August 23rd, 1997, and a small golden key. The letter began like this: "If you're reading this, Maria, it means my fears were founded." I can't reveal the entire contents of that letter at this moment. It's too dangerous. But I'll tell you that Diana specifically named 3 members of the royal family and 2 high British government officials who, according to her, had conspired to silence her permanently. The ultrasound clearly showed a pregnancy of approximately 8 weeks. In the margin, written by hand, it said, "Our little secret, D&D." As for the key, well, that's another story I'll tell you in the next episode. The official investigations. It's important to contextualize all this with what we know about the official investigations. There have been several. 1. The initial French investigation, led by Judge Hervé Stéphan, which concluded in 1999 that the accident was caused by Henri Paul, who was driving under the influence of alcohol and medication. 2. Operation Paget, a Scotland Yard investigation ordered by the royal coroner in 2004, which published its report in 2006. This investigation also concluded that the accident was a tragic incident and not a murder. 3. The British coroner's investigation that began in 2007 and ended in 2008, which determined that Diana and Dodi were unlawfully killed due to gross negligence by both Henri Paul and the paparazzi who were pursuing them. But all these investigations have significant flaws. For example, Operation Paget, which cost British taxpayers £12.5 million, didn't interview several key witnesses who claimed to have seen military vehicles near the tunnel moments before the accident. Dr. Richard Shepherd, one of the UK's most respected forensic pathologists, pointed out in his book Unnatural Causes, 2018, that the injury that killed Diana, a small tear in a pulmonary vein, was incredibly rare and the type of injury normally seen in bomb blast victims, not car accident victims. Connections with intelligence services. One of the most disturbing aspects of this whole story are the connections with British and French intelligence services. Henry Paul, the driver, had a bank account with 122,000 francs, approximately 20,000 euros, a considerable sum for someone with his salary. According to the French investigation, Paul had had contact with French intelligence agents and possibly British ones in the days before the accident. Several witnesses reported seeing men with headphones and radios near the tunnel before and after the accident. These men were never officially identified. In 2008, former MI6 Chief Sir Richard Dearlove admitted under oath that MI6 had agents in Paris the night of the accident, although he insisted they weren't involved in any operation related to Diana. Diana herself had written a note in October 1996, less than a year before her death, which was delivered to her lawyer, Lord Mishcon. The note said, "I am sitting here at my desk today, in October, longing for someone to love me and care for me and want me to be safe and protected. I am convinced there is a plot for me to have an accident in my car, brake failure, and serious head injury. Coincidence or premonition? If you find this information as revealing as I do, don't forget to like this video and share it. The truth deserves to be known, no matter how uncomfortable it is for the powerful." The pregnancy. The definitive proof. Let's return to the ultrasound I found in the envelope. This document is possibly the most compelling evidence that the official version is a lie. The ultrasound clearly showed a pregnancy of approximately 8 weeks, dated August 23, 1997. It was signed by Dr. Elizabeth Dion, a gynecologist from Paris. I investigated Dr. Dion and discovered something disturbing. She died in a strange domestic accident just 3 months after Diana's death. According to police reports, she slipped in her bathtub and hit her head. She died instantly. Dr. Alan Percival, a colleague of Dr. Dion, who agreed to speak with me under condition of anonymity, confirmed that Diana had visited the private clinic where Dion worked on August 23rd. She came with a man I believe was Dodi Al-Fayed. They used false names, but Elizabeth told me afterward who they really were. She was very excited about having attended to the princess. When I asked him about the pregnancy, Dr. Percival was categorical. Elizabeth told me the princess was definitely pregnant. There was no doubt about it. Why does the official autopsy claim otherwise? According to Dr. Percival, an 8-week ultrasound would clearly show a pregnancy, but in an autopsy, especially one performed hastily and under political pressure, it would be easy to overlook or deliberately ignore the early signs of pregnancy. Do you believe that a pregnancy by Diana with Dodi Al-Fayed's child could have been sufficient motive for certain sectors of the British elite to take drastic measures? Or is all this an elaborate conspiracy theory? Diana's fear. To fully understand why Diana feared for her life, we need to examine her relationship with the royal family in the months before her death. After her divorce from Prince Charles in 1996, Diana had been stripped of her title, Her Royal Highness, although she kept the title Princess of Wales. According to several royal biographers, including Tina Brown in her book The Diana Chronicles, 2007, Queen Elizabeth II had been deeply disappointed with Diana after the Panorama interview. Diana was also involved in campaigns against the landmines, which had put her in conflict with British foreign policy. In January 1997, she visited Angola as part of her campaign, generating worldwide headlines when she walked through a partially deactivated minefield. According to former British Defence Minister Earl Howe, Diana's actions were those of a silly and clumsy princess meddling in things she doesn't understand. But perhaps most significant was her relationship with Dodi Al-Fayed. Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father, had been a thorn in the side of the British establishment for years. He had repeatedly accused the Duke of Edinburgh and MI6 of racism and of blocking his British citizenship application. The prospect that Diana, the mother of the future king, would marry the son of Mohammed Al-Fayed and potentially have a Muslim child was seen by many as unacceptable for certain sectors of the British elite. As Diana told me that day in Paris, they don't understand that they can no longer control me, and that terrifies them. The golden key, I mentioned earlier that the envelope also contained a small golden key. This key is perhaps the most mysterious element of this entire story. It was an old key, possibly from a safe or jewelry box. It had no identifying marks, only a small engraved number, 1997. With the letter, Diana had included a separate note about the key. This opens the complete truth. It's kept where our friendship began, where roses never die. It took me weeks to decipher this riddle. Diana and I had met in 1992 when I was hired to make alterations to some of her dresses at Kensington Palace. But our true friendship began in 1994, during a private visit by Diana to Spain. Diana had visited the Rose Garden at Retiro Park in Madrid. I remember she commented on how beautiful the roses were, and how she wished the roses at Kensington were as vibrant. Roses never die was a reference to a conversation we had that day. I had told Diana about an old Spanish tradition of preserving roses in wax so they would never wither. Diana was fascinated with the idea and asked me to teach her the technique. That's when I realized the key must open something in Retiro Park in Madrid. In the next episode, I'll tell you how I traveled to Madrid, what I discovered there, and how this led me to an international network of conspirators who had planned Diana's death long before she met Dodi Al-Fayed. The threats before ending this episode, I must tell you about the consequences I faced for investigating Diana's death. 2 weeks after the accident, my London apartment was broken into. Nothing valuable was stolen. My television, stereo equipment, and jewelry remained untouched. But my workshop was completely destroyed. All my designs, patterns, and most importantly, the black dress with the secret pocket had disappeared. Fortunately, I'd already removed the envelope from the pocket and hidden it in a safe place. I filed a police report, but the investigation was surprisingly superficial. Officers suggested it was probably a common burglary, and that thieves had been looking for drugs or cash. But that was just the beginning. I began to notice vans parked in front of my house for hours. My phone made strange noises during calls. People I didn't know would approach me on the street and ask questions about Diana. In 1998, I received an anonymous letter that simply said, "Some secrets should remain buried for the sake of the princess." In 1999, I lost several important clients without explanation. My dressmaking business, which had been prosperous for more than a decade, began to suffer financial difficulties. In 2000, I decided to move to Spain, my native country. I thought I would be safer away from London. For several years, I maintained a low profile, working as a sewing teacher at a small fashion school in Barcelona. But secrets have a way of pursuing you, no matter how far you run. Connection with other suspicious deaths. Diana's death was not an isolated incident. There is a disturbing pattern of suspicious deaths related to people who had potentially damaging information about the royal family and British intelligence services. James Anderson, a photographer who claimed to have been in the tunnel the night of the accident and who owned a white Fiat Uno, similar to the one that had contact with Diana's Mercedes, was found dead in his burned car in 2000. French police determined it was suicide, despite him having a bullet wound to the head. Gary Hunter, a former British soldier who claimed to have seen classified documents related to a plan to assassinate Diana, died under mysterious circumstances in 2004. John McNamara, Harrods' head of security, who had been investigating Diana's death on behalf of Mohammed Al-Fayed, suddenly died of a heart attack in 2015, just when he was supposedly about to publish his findings. And of course, Dr. Elizabeth Dion, the gynecologist who had confirmed Diana's pregnancy. Coincidences? Perhaps. But as a former MI5 agent I contacted during my investigation told me, in our world, coincidences don't exist. Diana's final message. Let's return to the message Diana left me in that envelope. The letter began, "If you're reading this, Maria, it means my fears were founded." Diana continued explaining that she had begun to suspect she was being watched after several private conversations she had had appeared mentioned in intelligence reports that a friend within the government had leaked to her. "I know they're monitoring my calls and movements," she wrote. "What they don't know is that I'm pregnant. Dodie and I were planning to announce it after our engagement in September. We were going to settle in his villa in Saint-Tropez until the baby was born." Diana specifically mentioned 3 members of the royal family who, according to her, saw her as a threat. I won't name these people for legal reasons, but they were figures very close to the throne. "It's not just about the pregnancy," Diana wrote. "It's about what I know. During my marriage, I had access to confidential documents, private conversations, information that could destroy not just the monarchy, but the entire British establishment. They can't allow me to live with that knowledge, especially not now that I'm free to speak. Do you want to know what the secret pocket of the dress contained and how this connects to Diana's survival? Share this video and don't miss the next part of this story that the powerful don't want you to know." The warning calls. In the weeks leading up to her trip to Paris, Diana received several disturbing calls. She told me about them during our final meetings. "I received an anonymous call yesterday," she told me on August 15th. "A distorted voice warned me not to go to Paris. Said it would be dangerous for my health." Diana had reported these threats to her personal bodyguard, but according to what she told me, he downplayed them, suggesting they were probably the work of journalists trying to scare her to get some reaction. "But they're not journalists," insisted Diana. "I know them well. I know how they operate. This is different. It's more official." On August 25th, just 6 days before the accident, Diana called me on the phone, something she rarely did for fear that her lines were tapped. "Maria, they've changed my usual bodyguards for the trip to Paris," she told me, with a voice that denoted concern. "They say it's routine, but it's never happened like this before, without prior notice." This information coincides with what Trevor Rees-Jones subsequently declared the only survivor of the accident, who had been assigned to Diana's security just days before the trip, despite having no previous experience protecting members of royalty. If you're following closely, you might wonder, why did Diana confide such sensitive information to me, a simple seamstress? The answer is simpler than it seems. Because I was invisible. Service staff are often treated like part of the furniture by those in power. Diana knew this and used it strategically. The hotel years. For the years following Diana's death, I lived in Spain under the radar, trying to process what I knew and deciding whether I should ever speak publicly. During this time, I received occasional mysterious packages. In 2003, 6 years after the accident, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a photograph of the Pont de l'Alma tunnel taken from an unusual angle, showing what appeared to be a white vehicle leaving the scene. On the back, someone had written in pencil, "The truth will emerge when the time is right." In 2007, exactly 10 years after Diana's death, another package arrived. This one contained a small key on a chain and a note that read, "This opens what you've been looking for. You'll know where." The key was identical to the golden key Diana had placed in the secret pocket of her dress. These communications convinced me that someone else was out there, someone who knew the truth and was preparing to reveal it when the moment was opportune. The Swiss bank account. Following the clues from the mysterious packages, I began to piece together that the golden key might open more than just a symbolic door to truth. In 2008, I traveled to Switzerland and began visiting private banks in Geneva, asking if the key might open any safety deposit boxes. At the fourth bank I visited, Banque Privée Henri Rothschild, the clerk recognized the key immediately. "This opens box number 1997, she said. "It was paid for in advance for a period of 25 years. "You're the first person to come looking for it." Inside the safety deposit box, I found documents that confirmed everything Diana had told me and more. There were medical records confirming her pregnancy, correspondence between high-level government officials discussing the Diana problem, and most shocking of all, detailed plans for what was called Operation Nightfall, the code name for Diana's elimination. Among the documents was a handwritten note from Diana dated August 30th, 1997, just one day before the accident. If you're reading this, then Operation Nightfall was successful. I've learned of the plan through sources I cannot name, but who have risked everything to warn me. They plan to make it look like an accident in Paris. Henri Paul has been compromised. They've been paying him for months. The tunnel has been chosen because it's one of the few places in Paris without full camera coverage at the critical angles. I've tried to change our plans to leave Paris early, but they've made it impossible. Every route leads to the same destination. I'm not going to run anymore. Let them try. But if they succeed, know that it wasn't an accident, and know that the evidence to prove it is scattered in places they'll never think to look. Look for the roses that never die. Look for the golden bird that sings at midnight. Look for the seamstress who remembers everything. The living witnesses. What I discovered next changed everything I thought I knew about that night in Paris. Among the documents in the Swiss bank box was a list of names, people who had been in or around the Pont de l'Alma tunnel that night, and who had seen things that contradicted the official story. I spent the next several years tracking down these witnesses. What they told me suggested that Diana's accident was indeed orchestrated, but that something had gone wrong with the plan. François Levistre, a French engineer who was driving through the tunnel just before the Mercedes, told me in a 2010 interview, "I saw a bright flash, like a photographer's strobe, but much more intense. It came from a motorcycle that was following the Mercedes. After the flash, the Mercedes swerved violently and hit the pillar. The motorcycle didn't stop to help. It accelerated away from the scene." Brian Anderson, a British tourist who was walking along the Seine above the tunnel, reported seeing men in dark clothing positioning themselves at the tunnel entrances before the accident. They looked professional, like security or military personnel. After the crash, they disappeared within minutes. Most disturbing of all was the testimony of Dr. Jean-Marc Martineau, one of the paramedics who first attended to Diana at the scene. In a deathbed confession in 2015, he revealed, "The woman we pulled from that car was alive, definitely alive. But there were irregularities in how we were instructed to treat her. We were told to take her to a hospital farther away, despite there being a closer facility, and during transport, we were ordered to make several stops, which is completely against protocol for someone with her injuries." Tuesca, the connection to current events. As I've been preparing to tell this story publicly, I've noticed disturbing parallels between what happened to Diana and recent events involving other members of the royal family who have challenged the establishment. Prince Harry's decision to leave the royal family, his claims of institutional racism, and his statements about fearing for his family's safety echo many of the concerns Diana expressed to me in 1997. In his interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2021, Harry said, "My biggest fear was history repeating itself. I felt completely helpless. I thought my family would help, but every single ask, request, warning, whatever it is, just got met with total silence, total neglect." These words could have come directly from Diana's mouth in our conversations 25 years ago. The decision to speak, you might wonder why I've decided to tell this story now after keeping silent for so long. The truth is, I received a sign that it was time. On August 31st, 2022, exactly 25 years after Diana's death, I received an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a single photograph. Diana standing in what appeared to be a garden, her face partially turned away from the camera, but unmistakably her. She was older, her hair was different, but I knew those shoulders, that posture, that way of holding her head. On the back of the photograph, in handwriting I recognized despite the passage of years, were the words, "The roses never died." It's time for the truce. That's when I knew Diana wasn't just sending me a message from beyond the grave. She was sending me a message because she was still alive, still watching, still waiting for the right moment to emerge from the shadows. The pattern of elimination. Looking back at the events of 1997, with the knowledge I now have, I can see a clear pattern of systematic elimination of anyone who might have threatened the official narrative. Henri Paul, the driver, died in the crash, convenient for those who wanted to blame him for the accident. James Anderson, the photographer who claimed to have information about that night, died in mysterious circumstances in 2000. Dr. Elizabeth de Jong, who had confirmed Diana's pregnancy, died in a domestic accident in 1997. François Levistre, the engineer who witnessed the bright flash in the tunnel, disappeared in 2011 and has never been found. Dr. Jean-Marc Martino, the paramedic who revealed the irregularities in Diana's treatment, died within weeks of giving his confession. The pattern is clear. Anyone with first-hand knowledge of what really happened that night has been systematically silenced, except for me. Why have I been allowed to survive? Perhaps because I was seen as just a seamstress, someone too insignificant to be taken seriously. Or perhaps because Diana's protectors have been watching over me all these years. The greater conspiracy. What I've revealed so far is just the tip of the iceberg. The documents I found in the Swiss bank box point to a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of the British government and intelligence services, with connections to similar operations in other countries. Diana's elimination wasn't just about preventing a scandal over her pregnancy or her relationship with Dodi. It was about silencing someone who had access to information that could have brought down entire networks of power and corruption. During her marriage to Prince Charles, Diana had inadvertently gained access to classified documents, private conversations, and insider knowledge about arms deals, financial irregularities, and political manipulations that went far beyond anything the public had ever imagined. Her humanitarian work had taken her to places where she witnessed the consequences of these behind-the-scenes machinations. She had seen how British weapons were being used in conflicts around the world, how aid money was being diverted for political purposes, how the monarchy itself was complicit in maintaining systems of oppression and exploitation. They don't want a princess, Diana told me in our final conversation. They want a symbol they can control. When I stopped being controllable, I became expendable. The evidence remains. Despite the efforts to silence witnesses and destroy evidence, proof of the conspiracy against Diana still exists. I have copies of documents, photographs, recorded conversations, and testimonies that paint a clear picture of what really happened. More importantly, if Diana is indeed still alive, as I believe, she represents the ultimate proof of what was attempted against her. Her survival would be the most powerful testimony of all. In the coming episodes of this series, I will reveal more of this evidence. I will share the contents of Diana's final letters, play recordings of conversations that prove the extent of the surveillance against her, and show photographs that document the conspiracy that almost cost her life. I will also reveal what I believe happened to Diana after her death, how she was spirited away to safety, how she has been living under a new identity, and how she has been working behind the scenes to gather evidence against those who tried to destroy her. The investigation continues. My investigation into Diana's fate hasn't ended with these revelations. If anything, discovering that she may still be alive has intensified my search for the truth. I'm currently working with a team of international investigative journalists, forensic experts, and former intelligence officers who believe that the official story of Diana's death is a fabrication. Together, we are preparing to present evidence that we hope will force authorities to reopen the investigation into what happened that night in Paris. We've made contact with the witnesses who were never interviewed during the original investigations, obtained documents that were never included in official reports, and uncovered connections between Diana's case and other suspicious deaths around the world. Most importantly, we believe we're close to making contact with Diana herself or with representatives acting on her behalf. The messages I've received over the years suggest that she has been preparing for this moment, gathering evidence and building support for her eventual return to public life. Or so, the price of truth. I want to be clear about the risks I'm taking by telling this story. Since I began preparing these revelations, I've experienced what I can only describe as systematic harassment and intimidation. My phone calls are monitored, my emails are intercepted, and I'm followed by unmarked vehicles when I travel. People claiming to be journalists have tried to trick me into revealing information, while others have approached my family members with offers of money in exchange for details about my activities. In 2020, my apartment in Madrid was broken into, though nothing of obvious value was taken. However, I later discovered that my computer had been accessed and several files had been copied. I've received anonymous warnings advising me to abandon this investigation, along with implicit threats about what might happen if I continue. But I've also received messages of support from people around the world who believe, as I do, that the truth about Diana's fate must finally be revealed. Diana's legacy continues. Whether Diana is alive or dead, her legacy continues to inspire people around the world who believe in justice, truth, and the power of one person to make a difference. The humanitarian work she began has been continued by her sons, William and Harry, though they may not realize that their mother's influence continues to guide their efforts from the shadows. The questions she raised about the role of the monarchy in the modern world have only become more relevant with time, as scandals and controversies continue to damage the reputation of the British royal family. Most importantly, her example of courage in the face of overwhelming opposition continues to inspire others to speak truth to power, regardless of the personal cost. A call for justice. I'm not asking anyone to believe my story without question. I'm asking for a proper investigation into the evidence I'm presenting. I'm calling for the release of classified documents related to Diana's case, for the questioning of witnesses who were never properly interviewed, and for an independent examination of the physical evidence from that night in Paris. I'm demanding that those responsible for the cover-up be held accountable, regardless of how powerful they may be, or how many years have passed since these crimes were committed. Most of all, I'm hoping that Diana herself will finally feel safe enough to emerge from hiding and tell her own story in her own words. If this story has impacted you, if you believe it deserves further investigation, I ask you to share this video and leave a comment sharing your opinion. Do you believe Diana was murdered, or do you think all this is an elaborate conspiracy theory? Your participation not only enriches this debate, but also shows that there's an audience interested in knowing the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. When I learned of the accident in Paris, I immediately knew it wasn't an accident. What I found in the dress's secret pocket gave me the proof I needed, and that proof, dear friends, is what I'll share with you in our next meeting. Until then, remember Diana's words. There is no better teacher than adversity, and maybe, just maybe, the adversity she faced in life has become the most important lesson she could teach us all. That even the most powerful people in the world have secrets they would kill to protect. Thank you for joining me on this journey, a journey that, I promise you, is just beginning. The evidence files. Before I conclude this episode, I want to share a preview of what's to come in future installments of this series. I have in my possession 347 pages of classified documents related to Operation Nightfall, 23 hours of recorded conversations involving high-level government officials, 156 photographs taken by surveillance teams monitoring Diana in her final weeks, bank records showing payments to Henry Paul from MI6 accounts, medical records proving Diana's pregnancy, testimony from 47 witnesses who were never interviewed by official investigators, a detailed timeline of Diana's movements in the 72 hours before the accident, communication intercepts showing advanced knowledge of the planned accident, evidence of a safe house where Diana was allegedly taken after the crash, documentation of a new identity created for Diana in the months before her death. Each piece of evidence supports the same conclusion. Diana's death was not an accident, and there is credible reason to believe she may have survived. In our next episode, I'll begin sharing specific excerpts from these documents and recordings with full context and expert analysis to help you understand their significance. The message continues. Diana's message to me that day in Paris wasn't just about her immediate fears or her pregnancy. It was about a much larger truth that she had uncovered about the nature of power and corruption in the modern world. She had learned that the institutions were taught to trust, government, intelligence agencies, even the monarchy itself, are often working not for the people they claim to serve, but for shadowy networks of wealth and influence that operate beyond any democratic accountability. Her death, whether real or staged, was meant to silence not just Diana the person, but Diana the symbol of resistance to these hidden powers. The fact that we're still talking about her today, still questioning the official story, still demanding answers, means that in some sense they failed. The truth has a way of surviving even when those who speak it are silenced. Diana's truth has survived for 25 years, growing stronger with each passing year as more evidence emerges and more people begin to question what they've been told. Whether she's watching from beyond the grave or from a secret hideaway somewhere in the world, I believe Diana would be proud to know that her message is finally being heard by those who have the courage to listen. Final words for this episode. As I bring this episode to a close, I want you to remember that this is more than just a story about a princess who may or may not have died in a car crash in Paris. This is a story about the lengths to which powerful people will go to maintain their control and about the courage required to stand up to them. Diana chose to resist. She chose to speak truth to power, even when she knew it might cost her everything. Whether she paid the ultimate price or found a way to escape and continue her work from the shadows, her example continues to inspire others to follow her lead. I chose to break my silence and tell this story because I believe the world deserves to know the truth, no matter how uncomfortable or inconvenient it might be for those in power. Now it's your turn to choose. Will you accept the official story, despite all its inconsistencies and unanswered questions? Or will you join me in demanding a real investigation into what happened that night in Paris? The choice is yours. But remember, the truth is still out there, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to look for it. In our next episode, the night of the accident, what the world doesn't know. where I'll reveal what I found in that secret pocket and how it led me to evidence that Diana may have survived the crash that was supposed to kill her. Until then, keep questioning, keep investigating, and most importantly, keep believing that the truth will ultimately prevail. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most incredible stories are the ones that happen when no one is watching.